Question is, are you gonna stay for the whole thing? I don't even know. You know, I don't know if that's happened once, that somebody's made the whole entire beginning to end. Did you? Maybe, yeah.
Okay, they're ready.
So, yeah, but it's not 7:30.
It is.
It's not 7:30.
It is.
Are you gonna argue with the cell phone network?
I've got F2 time.
You've got what?
F2.
Meaning?
It's the racing thing. It's what they advertise.
I
The
trust,
timekeeper for F2 racing. There you go.
I trust the cell phone network to not be off by more than 5 or 10 seconds.
It's because you trust Comcast and Verizon so much.
There was a thing on Nextdoor that apparently Verizon has been bullied into creating a backup plan to lease fiber space with AT&T for when Comcast's line is down. Well, in the last 10 years, the Comcast line has gone out for hours,
Well, that's-
at least half a dozen times in the last 10 years.
That's what I said. It's a weekly occurrence, it seems, not a monthly or yearly.
Well, it's happening more and more often, let's put it that way. But, you know, Comcast is the new AT&T, we don't care, we don't have to. Actually, wasn't Comcast formed in a partnership with AT&T at one time?
None of them are different. We have Time Warner down south, you know, trying to turn your box in when you want to, like, leave them. They make it a 2-hour ordeal.
You know, the cable companies conspire, in the criminal sense of the word, to trade customer areas to make sure that no two of them compete in an area.
I'm shocked that Giant Corp America would do that. Why do you tell me obvious things I know? If you told me they didn't conspire, that'd be a story.
They're going to be here, so I just asked him if we could move committee reports up. Well, I was going to make the request when we started. I guess it's time.
Okay, well, my cell phone now says it's 7:30, so, I'll look at the agenda so I know what the date is. Are we rolling? The regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District Board of Directors for June 21st, 2018 is called to order. Roll call, please.
President Leonard Warren,
Present.
Vice President Barbara Dye,
Here.
Director Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Director Matthew Clark is absent, and Director David Seaton.
Here.
At the table is General Manager Chuck Duffy, Legal Counsel, we have Jonathan on it, but it's actually Bill Parkin, and I'm the Assistant General Manager related here.
Prior to the regular meeting, we had a special meeting with closed session, and I would ask council to repeat the report out of closed session from that.
There are no reportable actions, Mr. President.
Thank you. General public participation. Anybody in the audience want to comment on items not on the agenda? Directors?
I'll mention this, I could talk more about the CSDA conference that I went to.
Well,
But-
how about under?
Exactly. The
item-
whole quick thing I wanted to say was, as it relates to the parks, is it's real interesting. This lady put on a little, she's from San Mateo Public Works, issues relating to prevailing wage. Long story short, regardless of what she got into, the main outcome was like, you guys have to get on sooner rather than later forming the nonprofit, because everything can be handled through that. Everything from,
You mean the Friends of type?
Friends of, yeah, 501c3, so that's the way to get around everything. And if there are parents that want to donate time, money, labor, even if they're licensed, whatever, if they're dealing with the 501c3. But long story short, I think we should have another parks only meeting scheduled. That should be one of the main topic, that we kind of talk. I know it's been for years, people have said it, going back to Gail. So I think that, and other people on the parks advisory committee have been talking about that, is that side of that. So I think.
Well, let's talk about that on your item, because then we can take
Okay.
board action if we want to direct.
Okay, so in terms of the parks only meeting though, to address a lot of issues, any ideas, or you want to talk about that later? Or should we talk about that?
Future agenda items. No. We can, let's not do it now because it's general public participation, but we'll talk about.
Future agenda item
Yeah.
17 maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, okay, we got it.
I just want to say you have to pay prevailing wage if it's government property. So
Yeah.
having a nonprofit doesn't get you out of it in that case.
But I thought I thought what David's saying is it allows volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely. With the main thing, what is like, the nonprofit handling the volunteer list and everyone signing a piece of paper that says they're volunteering, and that's like having the 501c3 and getting that signature is additional, that's the main protection that's, in this situation, that it's a no-brainer where people have offered in terms of, hey, we'll do this.
You know, come to think of it, First Flush and Snapshot Day is essentially totally volunteers, and never been an issue there.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue. We should talk about it.
And
when
I'm
we
sure
know
the-
Yeah, absolutely. I
I'm sure the
think-
unions make it as complicated.
Yeah,
as
and there, I mean, even her thing got into things have changed in the past year and a half with, Department of Industrial Relations that they're not even enforcing, but they're gonna start enforcing on amounts over 15,000, 25,000, different things that our board could be held liable for the contractor not doing certain filings and things like that. So that's beyond it. There's, she obviously specializes just in this, but one outcome I think is that, and I think moving on the, parks only and spending some time on that would be
Right.
important.
So Director Dye requested that we move up to the beginning of the meeting, to after item 1, except our consultants aren't here, so Director Dye had asked that we have the report from
The outreach committee, which was David and myself for the Burnham Strip
Yeah.
community meeting.
So, to simplify the agenda and anybody watching it later, maybe we should try and do everything that would come under item 11 now,
Okay, well, that would,
to be reevaluated when K and K show up. So, did you have anything else? I think we'll have to have council look into the various things you've brought up and report back to us at some point.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, she's a resource. I have her little packet. I could share
Can
more
you send
information.
that to us?
Yeah, I'll leave you some stuff.
Okay.
She's writing, Sam Foster is all she does is just works with the agencies, especially with the overhaul of these new
Okay.
things and yeah, so as soon as I kind of described the situation, she was like all about, hey, the 501c3, you guys need to get that going sooner rather than later, and so that, it's common that in our situation, so. But are you saying move all of 11? You want to talk about CSDA, everything?
We may as
park?
well, otherwise, we have a member of the public here. Otherwise, it makes it difficult for people trying to look for a specific item on
Okay.
the agenda if the agenda is sliced and diced.
that's fine with me. Anything else on your?
I mean, I could share in a little bit in terms of, so SB 929, that's Special District Website Transparency. Their CSDA is a huge sponsor of it. It basically is going to pass. Everyone is supportive of it. Just requires independent districts to maintain a website, posting board agendas, all that stuff, and even allows a hardship exemption for agencies that are so, whether it's no broadband or other, they're not able to maintain a website, so they could opt out, and there's a special waiver for that. So,
Is this a building?
yeah, so this is going through basically tying up
Okay.
some of the things, so the main things, posting board agendas, posting district compensation report, or posting a link where the report can be found, posting district financial transaction report, or posting a link to where the report can be found, posting district enterprise catalog, listing district contact information, and then allows the hardship exemption if you want to get out of it.
So if we have the meeting packet online and those documents are in the meeting packet, does that meet the requirement?
You're saying everything in like 100-page PDF versus,
Everything here
Yeah.
is,
No, we went through this district transparency thing. We don't have the actual certificate from CSDA.
Yeah.
But we have met all the requirements with the checklist. So we literally went down the
actually,
checklist.
there's one older recommendation from the San Mateo County Grand Jury that I don't know if it's in this bill or not, but we're not meeting this recommendation from the Grand Jury, which is that the home page has to have a link to the next meeting agenda. You can't only have it buried somewhere else. You can have it wherever else you want it, but it also has to be a link on the home page to the agenda for the next upcoming meeting.
Well, I can tell you of the 4 districts on the coast side, ours is the easiest. Trying to find Half Moon Bay is a pain in the neck.
Oh, the fire district buries it to try and make it so you can't find
I
it.
know.
And Half Moon Bay now has it very easy to find.
Oh, do they?
On their page. The new website's for easy.
so yeah. So this is passing, so this is something,
Okay.
you know, this is, this was one of the ones that just,
Well, yeah.
you know, this one's really interesting. This is leases and sales of surplus land. Require special districts and other local agencies to offer the first right of refusal to affordable housing developers, schools, and parks before selling, leasing, or otherwise conveying surplus land.
Yeah, that-
So
that
they're
law's
strongly
decades old.
opposed.
That law's decades old.
Well, it's selling or leasing.
That-
So if
that
we-
law's decades old.
Not the leasing part.
So if we want to lease,
Oh.
if you want to lease your vacant land for, say, cattle, because you're gonna develop something in 50, as soon as you go to lease it, affordable housing, developer would come in and buy it up and it's done.
So
if this
basically, they're
passes-
just throwing leasing into the
Yeah,
selling part.
and,
CSDA
yeah,
as opposed?
strongly opposed, yeah, that's their,
Can we have an agenda item for this board to take a position on that? Because right now, I don't even know what our position might be.
I don't really
so,
have
and I think the
land
key
we
is
wanna lease.
leasing, yeah, in terms of
We don't
that.
have land we want to lease.
What? There is land that this district would like to lease.
Yes, true, true.
But in general, I think it does, you know, that is a classic scenario where sometimes there's a piece of land, who knows best about the long-term planning of the community than the very local, you know, representatives in that area. So they understand that, hey, yeah, it might look like this is the best place for new affordable housing development, but really, you know, in 40 years, there's gonna be other constraints, and some of it might be, you know, related to whatever, and that people that are closely tied to that should have control over that somebody's gonna develop a piece of land that really
You
just,
mean
let's lease it
maybe-
out for 20
Maybe you
years.
wouldn't put a new
Yeah.
fire station
Or
on
really,
park-
like
on
one of
parkland?
the guys I was with was from Coma, with cemeteries, where they lease it out for, you know, agriculture until they're ready to, over years.
Hmm.
So there's an example of where,
You're gonna lease
you
it
know,
out to dead.
yeah. But, well, you know, so we'll see. I think the key is it's gonna be chopped up in terms of different, you know, how to address those types of issues. And then,
If you could make available to staff and the rest of the board electronic report.
yeah, and another one is AB 3037, also they're strongly opposed to it. Recreates redevelopment agencies as redevelopment housing and infrastructure agencies.
Okay,
To borrow against
for
tax
sure, I
increment.
want an item on our next agenda to have the board submit a letter of opposition on that. You know, the one provably good thing that Jerry Brown did, and now they want to undo it.
Well, and so that's kind of the outcome of the general meeting is, so basically, to sum up everything that was talked about is that, basically, nothing's really getting done in Sacramento because they're about to, you know, with the elections coming up and then going on break, and then everyone knows with Brown what he did. But no matter what happens with the election, there's gonna be just, you know, the number one bills being passed is all these new redevelopment agencies and changing all that and affordable housing. And then, you know, basically towards the basically middle of next year, you're just gonna see a wave of these bills that whoever gets elected will, you know, will define how the continuum of where that is, but no matter what, every governor and everyone, you know, there's gonna be a change in that because, you know, with Brown leaving, so that's something that's gonna happen. It will just be to what extent and the details of it.
For members of the public who might want to get involved on that issue and talk to all of their elected officials, what redevelopment agencies do in a nutshell is, I won't even go into the illegal eminent domain that is the core of redevelopment agencies, but they essentially steal money from all special districts in the territory and give it to cities. That's what a redevelopment agency does. So everybody should contact all their elected officials and oppose the reincarnation of redevelopment agencies. And my understanding is this bill could otherwise be subtitled "Back with a Vengeance."
Oh, there's gonna be, even more to the point, there's gonna be, yeah, tons of different bills coming out that, you know, that's where it's more about it's happening. It's just gonna be to what extent and how, what impact is it gonna have an effect on
Make sure you
smaller
can
communities.
give sufficient information to staff for that
Yeah.
agenda item on,
SB, that one that we just talked about.
did you
was,
say AB 3037?
Yeah.
AB 3037.
Yeah, so give staff information to put in the package
Yeah,
for that
I'll give
agenda
them all
item.
this. So, yeah, you know, other than that, you know, just a lot of good conversations about other smaller districts dealing with different things and, you know, so it was good overall, just, you know, meeting with the different, you know, we went to like 30 different offices and just, you're just kind of there, just kind of talking points in terms of these things that are going on, how they affect smaller
It's
districts.
a good different perspective.
Yeah.
That's what I've said. I've worked in a whole bunch of different agencies and pick up different tidbits from different agencies.
So if you could put together some written report that maybe we could attach to the minutes?
Just give us that stuff and we'll put it on our legal thing for next
Yeah.
agenda.
But I mean, overall report, because the AB 1234 requires written reports, I think written. I don't remember for sure, but I think it requires written reports when the agency pays to send somebody to one of these things.
Okay?
Yeah, so we could just like attach that to these
Yeah.
minutes or something. Okay, Barbara.
We held the outreach committee for the Burnham Strip held a community event last Saturday from 9 to 1 with the landscape architects. Lots of great volunteer help to put it on. Lots of thanks to Nancy Marsh and Paul Kolsch and a number of other people. We had some community members there also with a separate setup talking about some of the history of the Burnham Strip, so that was a nice added piece of what we had going on.
Oh, that was separate, okay.
And we had lots of people stop by. We had 94, kept having to print more forms. We had 94 comments come in. And Nancy, I think, has done a first look at all of the comment forms, and we're going to have an official report later, but just thought you might be interested in some of the quick conclusions.
So this is a preview
A
report.
preview, yes.
I'm Nancy Marsh from Parks Advisory Committee. We planned to be there from 9 to 1. We were there till almost 2.
Yeah.
We had a constant flow of people. I have 70 forms, and I know we gave out, well, I have 70 that were turned back in. There were another 10 or 15 that people wanted to take away with them to collect their thoughts and send them in, so they may scan them and send them to the info email, or they may just drop them by the office, or they may never get around to it, but I just,
Let me just ask,
Yep.
Delia, when the info ones come in, have you gotten comments? And
I've only gotten one, and it
Okay.
wasn't provided on a form, it was just.
Okay, but maybe the
She
The
sent
comments,
that.
you can also send it
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
to
I'll
Nancy.
send
who's-
them all.
Great.
So my plan, because we just got free form comments and asked them to just tell us anything they liked, didn't like, is to create a database so that we can sort them by whether it's about active stuff, whether it's about passive stuff, whether it's about parking, so that we can, rather than looking through all 70. But I'll give you some highlights. Overwhelmingly, they came from people in El Granada. There were only 3 of the 70 that were out from outside El Granada. 1 from Clipper Ridge, 2 from Moss Beach.
Clipper Ridge is still within the district
It's
and
within the
within,
district. Yeah, only
within the
2 out
Parks
of
and
the
Rec
district.
service area.
Yeah, there were two from Moss Beach out of the district. So of the 70, more than 60 were very positive for having a park. Only 2 said, please leave it alone and leave it natural. Of those, about 2/3 desired active features. Overwhelmingly, the skate park. Generally, not much bigger than it is, but make sure that we keep the ramp. Many mentions of playgrounds, trails, benches, and I need to have copies, because some mention features of concept 1, 2, or 3. So I need copies of those to understand some of those comments. Of those who commented on parking, about 60% wanted the same or more parking. And those specifically tended to relate to, so that you carry your surfboard across and back. About 40% wanted minimal parking or less, or just focused on the community rather than the beach. Significant mentions for bathrooms, and bathrooms with showers near where the parking is, so that when people come back from surfing, they can have an outdoor shower to clean up and a place to change, as well as bathrooms.
Let me point out that before the current lease operator of the RV lot took that over, there were outdoor showers there, which is a much more appropriate place for them, because then the sand goes right back onto the beach.
Yeah.
So people need to go rag on the current lease operator there to restore what used to be there. And there also used to be a public bathroom in that building that's on the RV lot. But he's turned it into a laundromat for the people that are living there.
Well, there was, in addition to the showers for surfers, there were a lot of comments that if we're gonna have a park, we need bathrooms at the park. Just if you want people to stay there for any amount of time. The other mentions were a number of mentions of safe crossings for Highway 1. Some said, do what you need to do to get people oriented to walking down to Coronado and crossing where there's already a light. But most were, we need a safe crossing from wherever the parking is across Highway 1. I went and looked up the...
Would a catapult do?
Yeah.
Would a catapult do?
Some drew elaborate drawings of tunnels or bridges.
There's a
Yeah.
tunnel one underneath.
Which
looked at
would
the,
be millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Although, I mean, that's where I think, okay, keep going.
Outside our authority, outside our jurisdiction.
I went and looked up, thanks to MCC's great website, the Connect the Coast plan, which actually, for its pedestrian crossings, does have a crossing kind of right in that spot, halfway between the lights, with it just says pedestrian crossing with beacons. It's not proposing a light there. And the more recent report that you guys had from Caltrans just made a note for that strip of highway that they support the Connect the Coast side recommendations. So that's not in our jurisdiction, but that might be information we just keep in our back pocket.
Question for staff, would it be out of line for this board to make a specific suggestion officially to Caltrans and or the county on what this board thinks should be done there? Because I have a specific thing I would propose if we're going to have an agenda item on that, but...
Is there any legal reason we can't do that?
No, we need to, yeah, I mean, that's, to me, that was my number one bullet point I wrote down that people talked about was actually the, the most consensus and concern, everything were actually things that had nothing to do with us, were Caltrain issues, whether it's a crosswalk. I mean, that's why I think in terms of to hold that level of discussion, whether it's a crosswalk, if, like Jeff Clark says, he has all the plans already.
I think you're looking at the plan.
Yeah.
That he drew.
Well,
Yeah, possibly, I don't know. I thought he
No,
said.
He went through it with me.
But either way, though, the
It's
point
like
is,
the entire
yeah,
space
the point is, it doesn't matter because we have no jurisdiction anyways.
Right.
And Caltrans is probably the hardest agency maybe to work with. But starting those discussions, because it seems like even to the extent that, forget the crosswalk, some of our plans actually incorporate their properties into it. We use some for parking, all that, so it's like we need to open up that dialogue.
Well, this
Well,
isn't on our agenda
when-
tonight.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about an outcome from the meeting was a lot of community members mentioned that issue, so that's a huge,
I will briefly summarize as it's not going to happen in the next 20 years.
yeah.
and how many?
It's not going to
We're
happen in
just-
the next 20 years.
And when you say that,
20?
It's priority 4 on the list of priorities.
when you say next 20 years, that include the plans that we incorporate some of their frontage right
The
there?
community has argued against it so strongly, the county, all the current county supervisors.
When you say it-
And roads and everybody are going to have to be gone before anybody will look at it.
When you say it, specifically
Any kind of
which,
crosswalk in that area.
all right, I have another,
Tunnel-
proposal which
tunnel
I will make-
possible in that area.
when we have an agenda item for this board to consider sending a letter to anybody and everybody on it, I will
Yeah.
make a specific proposal which is cheap and fast to do and solves the problem.
But that's why we need the agenda item.
Teleport.
Yeah. Because the outcome of that is they'll see that there's
No, I
community
made the
that's
proposal
interested.
in 97. I'll just try and find.
To me, the
my-
more important question is not what they'll do with the crosswalk, but will they cooperate with their land in front of us? Because right now it's used for parking. So could we assume there's certain things that,
I
I'd
think-
probably suggest we turn this over to
Yeah.
Beck to consider at your next meeting. Is that
yeah.
Well,
viable?
I'll get all the comments together, because I think the concept that you're discussing that encroached on their easement was number 3. But we didn't ask people to choose between the concepts, but a number of them mentioned 1, 2, or 3. And I think if there was one that comes out as the favorite, it's 2. And then just, plantings along the easement, so, but I'll get you all the details at the next meeting. The middle road comes out the top.
But thank you for doing
We'll
all
get
that
for
work
next
of
week.
analyzing, I thought it would be helpful.
Just
Um,
can I
yeah,
just a
go-
couple other
did you finish?
notes from
Yeah,
the
sorry.
PAC meeting. One is that the summer programs will kick off on the 30th with Dale's Walk down Deer Creek. And we proposed for the fall an e-newsletter as a follow-up to the summer program. So we can say we're doing them, we did them, and we're going to collect pictures as we go along, so that we can do an e-newsletter of how they went. And just a quick note, we endorsed the K&K proposal for the 7 and 8 concept design with a request that if we move from concept proposals to actually doing something there, that we replace the picnic tables down at Balboa on the other medians on Balboa that have decrepit picnic tables at the same time as we do the playground.
And I would like to request that we discuss the Burnham Strip and next steps at our next meeting. The PAC committee's not meeting now again until September.
Oh.
So I think we'd like
And
to
this
keep
may
this moving.
dovetail in with David's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Special
think there's
meeting.
a lot to talk about, and I know that it's not on the agenda tonight, so we really shouldn't be talking about the issues, but it does seem as if it's good to have a little report to be thinking about it, and that it should be on our next agenda.
Yeah.
And you two are the,
Well, we were the communications committee, but then in terms of the outreach for the Burnham Strip, Leonard delegated us to manage
as
it.
part of that community.
I think I sort of misremembered what your committee was.
Well, I was gonna suggest maybe we take number 12, report on Parks Advisory Committee, and broaden it a little bit, and put it as number 1. Because I know everyone loves to talk about the sewer stuff, but
Well, I think
does that,
we've had a.
You mean on future agendas?
a future agenda?
Oh, future
Yeah.
agenda, sure.
Yeah.
Just have that as a standing item, so people
sure.
come here to talk
Yeah.
about parks and whatnot. You can
Right.
give your report, they can give their report.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Sewer stuff.
Now,
Yeah.
in any case, I do want on our next agenda, the item to consider sending a letter about a cheap, fast, easy solution for crossing the highway there.
We can
Well, why
talk
don't you
about,
send that cheap, easy solution around and then
To you.
Yeah, to me, or everybody, I guess. I don't think it's a ground.
Well,
All right,
it
just
sort
send
of
it to
is.
me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that would be part of the discussion, would be just, because you can't really talk about Burnham Park without talking about
Right.
some of the issues that come up when you're talking about improving that property, and so we want to think about those.
I mean, that's where we need some of these parks meetings with like either 12 topics or some of these topics just in, you know, an hour long on them.
Or we go to
Yeah.
11:30 again.
Yeah, but,
No,
yeah.
I think we're all.
But no, all these things need to be agenda items, because the only way we're gonna get Caltrans to
Yeah.
move is from, you know, they see that there's people showing up to meetings and that there's coming from us saying something needs to be done, and it might still take them 15 years
you
instead
can't
of
get
20.
Caltrans to do anything unless you can get the governor to threaten to fire the director
Yeah,
of Caltrans.
well, the only reason why we do need to partner with them is because right now people are using their land for existing parking anyways. So as part of our project, can we assume that people can continue to use their land the way that it's been used for the past 10 years? Because to me, that's the biggest thing is, you know, all of a sudden we break ground on a project, it looks beautiful, but we kind of put some of the parking or things like that.
Okay, this
Okay, so-
overlaps into item 4. so-
Yeah, but no, outside that, I think other things I heard that was kind of interesting in terms of the different comments is you get rid of the skate park and you have the little seating amphitheater, that becomes the de facto skate park in terms of that being kind of taken over if you don't have, you know, that's what's gonna happen. And so I think another thing interesting in terms of, you know, even coming from people saying, oh, ramp, I don't wanna see the, you know, I think if there was a skate structure, maybe it could be something like a bowl where it's not, you know, that's not visible up high, but it's something, I think that's something that, you know, let's let the constraints of the numbers kind of drive the reality of that, but at least, you know,
Maybe the PAC could
taking that into account.
invite opinions from the skaters as to whether the design of the one in Pacifica is a good model.
Well, I think on this specifically, Tony Hawk has a place, #1 skater in the world, you know, lives in El Granada, his brother's here, he's offered that as soon as you guys have a place or you want this, you know, they've done hundreds of skate parks, he's saying the funding's there, the design's there, all that's there, just get real about if there's a place that can be done. A resource like that might be a good time to bring it in, hear him out, see if it's even realistic while we're still, you know, listening to ideas.
I really feel as if we should having these discussions when it's agendized. and
No,
the
absolutely.
Public knows that we're
Yeah.
talking about these
Third thing
things.
that I kept rehearing is maintenance. From the people keep bringing up is, well, you know, what's this gonna cost? Because that's gonna drive whether I'm interested in this. You know, I have no opinion until you tell me what this is gonna cost. And then it was interesting how many people kept saying, yeah, it's, you know, it's one thing to do this, but how much is it gonna cost to maintain? And no one really had an answer. And it was interesting how many people from the community were concerned about those long-term maintenance costs and how that's gonna factor into everything.
That definitely will be a factor, and we do.
One of my notes I didn't read was that I had only one person ask me where the money was going to come from. There were a number of people who commented, you know, what are the maintenance costs, or be sure you include maintenance and don't just put in a park and not maintain it. And so I had an opportunity to tell them that part of their property tax is already going into the kitty for Parks and Rec. So then he didn't seem to be bothered about it. But I was surprised I didn't get, other than people saying if you build it, maintain it, I didn't hear many comments about where's the money for this going to come from, except that one.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, when we did Measure G, a core part of it was indicating that we would reallocate the property tax money that the district has been receiving forever from subsidizing sewer function to the Parks and Rec function.
I didn't mention that it had been doing sewers, I just said it's already in the bank.
And yeah.
Better PR.
Yeah, that's better PR, but but to me, I'm more interested in the next phase before I see more designs is now let's get these numbers, you know, in terms of what, and that's something they said they could provide as an estimate, so, was there a reason we told them not to provide any numbers in terms of estimates? Was it, that it would just cost more money at this point?
Just because we were just a
Yeah.
conceptual.
Yeah, we were specifically not.
This was conceptual
Yeah,
design.
and then that's what I'm getting at, in terms of the next phase,
Yeah.
focus
We
on
always
those
knew there-
numbers.
If we went forward with this,
Yeah.
there'd be another phase.
Yeah.
So none of those three were intended to be a specific park design,
Yeah.
but just showing elements
Yeah.
that could be
Generate
included
discussion.
in an
Yeah.
eventual design.
Yes.
Well,
So I think
what
at
I-
our next meeting, when we discuss it, we need to talk about what our direction is for the next step, and then we need to ask for a proposal from them for next steps on Burnham Park. So, we have a bunch of steps ahead of us, because we have to figure out what we want them to produce next. What is our next step? But that's not for tonight.
Well, I mean, should it be though, potentially, I guess, then maybe that becomes the number one item on our next Parks Only meeting, in terms of the planning of how we're gonna handle, special meeting or whatever, the next phase of,
Well, I'd like to see it in the next, regular agenda. I mean, we're done with the budget stuff, right?
No, we've got the budget in July with the associated sewer service charge increase.
Okay. What else?
So I'd rather not attract a lot of people to that meeting.
I just think it's like, if we can, I think it's good to
What's the date of the 218 hearing?
19th.
So it's at our July regular
Yeah,
meeting.
for July regular.
So maybe we agendize this for August,
Yeah.
unless there's some, there's not a lot of other looming big issues that are gonna take a lot of time, right?
Well,
And then if we need to involve the PAC, then September, they start meeting again. Suppose they could meet in August.
So when do we get the full-blown report on the outreach event?
Well, Nancy's working on it. So,
I was aiming to have it to you before the July meeting. And if you're not going to talk about it till August, I'll still try to have it to you by the July meeting, just so I get it done.
Well, when we look at the July agenda, we'll have to, one of the things I always try and do as board president is estimate how long the meeting is going to be, and if I think it's going to be too long, then I may suggest certain items to be bumped to a future meeting. But the flip side of that is if I think that it isn't going to be a long meeting, then maybe we can do something like that at the same meeting.
All right.
all right.
So it looks like that covers items 11 and 12, and
I don't think they're going to come tonight, so
Um,
I think they,
I guess we're going to have to assume they're not going to come, and so we'll have to do item 1 without the consultants actually here.
but essentially they're proposing to use the same process that they used for
Well,
Burnham
let's
Strip.
announce it. Item
Oh,
1,
sorry.
consideration of concept design proposal from Kikuchi and Kenkel for median 7 and 8 in Avenue Balboa. And maybe somebody close to the numbered map there can point to 7 and 8. Balboa.
I had a request from
So it's
one of the
Balboa
members
Circle and
of
the next
the
one over.
Parks Committee that we should stop just calling them by their numbers and
Thank you.
call them by the street name with
Yes,
the number.
yes.
Well, that's why I
Yes.
actually added to our thing in Avenue Balboa,
Yeah.
because we had it originally as being 7 and 8, which doesn't tell you, so.
So
Well,
Balboa 7 and 8 or
It
something.
it would also help if cross streets were mentioned, because the streets that have all of these, all 3 of them are long streets.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll add, so we'll keep the Avenue Balboa and we'll add cross streets.
So actually, before we go into this, I have a question for staff. Why, and now I have to make sure I know the street name. Yeah. Why is the Ave Granada median being ignored? Actually, there's the island and the median.
Why are you asking that?
Well, I didn't say which staff.
Oh, we're all in Granada.
Ave Granada has a very nice median that I think is heavily used by pedestrians. And the one at the end, is that a 2 there in yellow?
Yeah, it's sort of
That one,
kind of a weird.
Well, I thought we had started looking at 7, 8, 11, and 12 or something. We decided to narrow our focus to see how this process went and then move on.
all right, so Ave Granada is going to be looked at some point.
Yeah,
They all were.
yeah, none were being ignored. They had just
basically recommended starting with 8, 7, and initially, I believe, 11, and now it's been dropped to just 7 and 8, and potentially 11 as the test medians. But I think eventually they'll all be addressed, I hope.
Well, I think after the 3 that you just mentioned that are in progress, I think something at Av Granada has to be next, because that's the only one that's close to a third of the town.
I think the concept is that once we get through this process, then we're gonna look at an overall median plan. I mean, in some ways, if we choose a trail design, you know, and we choose picnic tables, and, you know, we have some design concepts for them, that will make it easier to, you know, then there will still have to be a process for what goes on each one, but some of the design components will have been established. So it'll be easier.
And field tested.
Yes. So as far as this goes, it seems like a very reasonable amount. We were pleased, I think, with the work that they did on the Burnham Strip. This would get things moving. I'm congratulations to staff for getting the topo authorized, which is great. So we don't have to wait till September for that.
So for the other directors, my understanding of what was done is that K&K said they can do it for some particular price, which I verified with Chuck. He thinks that's about the same we would have paid anybody else, all of which were too busy, and so K&K said that they could do it.
They recommended their guy, yeah.
And they said that they happen to have staff available immediately, but that if we delayed, they were going to start having summer vacations, and they would probably not get to it till September if it didn't happen right away.
So is it done?
Fortunately, well, it's not done, but it's happening, I think, next week.
Yeah.
So that gives them the basis that they need, just for the public, for the plan, because they need to have the topo, because any trail design has to be ADA compliant, and to demonstrate that, they need to have the elevations.
Can you make sure that when the topo is completed, the district is either the owner or has unlimited rights?
We own it. We get the CAD drawing and everything like that,
Okay.
but I'll double check.
So the other thing that's, I think, of interest here is it does, you know, there's deliverables and excluded services, but they're also saying that we can add on to this contract and the fee schedule for additional services. For example, if they wanted them to do an additional presentation, you know, so it gives us some flexibility. So we have an initial, you know, presentation, more or less like what they did for the Burnham Strip, and then the option to add additional components at cost, at their cost. Well, not at their cost, at what it would cost us.
Right.
For
But this is
cost.
just for 7 and 8 though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, you know, even where, you know, with the one thing I like what they did with Burnham is when they did the kind of SWOT analysis of the property.
The constraints map, I
The
love
what-
the
yeah.
constraints
The
map.
what analysis?
Just the strengths and weaknesses and just, you know, just the different, you know, just, it just broke it down. I think that's where I think we're missing with the medians in this whole picture is that full assessment and, you know, professional packet of, you know, this is the exact dimensions and, you know, the different slopes and different, you know, that level of detail. And I think for all the medians, you know, in terms of that, you know, I know we're focusing on 7 and 8 and the concept planning could be similar to what they just did in terms of coming up with something to spark a dialogue. But the other component of it is a full professional inventory of all the medians that we're planning to develop so that throughout the whole process, because to me, that's what drives my decisions for 7 and 8 is okay, maybe we have this there, but maybe it might be better on one of these other medians. But I don't know if it's gonna be better on these other medians because I need to know those constraints. And I think if they, you know, if we ask them to take a look at that, how much that would be to provide that analysis, not the concept drawing side of it, for all the medians, and then just focus their concept on 7 and 8, median 7 and 8.
Didn't we ask the Parks Committee to do that, and haven't they spent 2 years doing that?
Yeah.
I want to respect what their.
I think absolutely using that, but I think that, obviously that's where you're paying professionals for. I think more the Parks Committee, we could still use in terms of the design renderings to, to me, I wasn't as impressed with their concept drawings. I was expecting more detail in terms of different views of it, everything, where I was, where I liked what they provided was the other one that just showed the constraints, and so.
At the March 1st meeting, one of the priorities that you gave to the PAC was, in addition to kind of demonstration projects, to do the full trails plan. And we have been feeding it in a little bit at a time, but we do have a task list for an overall full trails plan. We first wrote it up like an RFP, and we've reduced it to just, here's the list of tasks that I think David covers what you've said. If we just sort of feeding it in as you guys can tell us at what pace you want things, but we have, at our last meeting, finished that up so that whenever the board wants to see it, we've got the overall trails plan task list. But it seems like we've got our hands full right now with Burnham and the little ones.
Right. And I guess would it hurt to provide that to K&K?
No?
Is that comprehensive?
Yeah, and maybe even
I think they have it.
maybe even another revision in terms of, I know that, I know how much time went into that and everything up to that point, how long it's been now in terms of.
No, this is one we just redid. We just did it in April.
Okay.
It's not the.
For 7 and 8, the one
2014.
updated from Dale's original one?
Oh, we gave the Dale's original 7, 8, sorry, we're mixing up full
Okay.
trails plan with 7 and 8. We gave the drawings, which were not meant to be renderings
Yeah.
to build from, that Dale did. They were
Yeah.
just meant to be concepts.
Yeah.
We gave them to K&K as just background, but
Yeah.
not to limit them to
Okay.
produce that, but just, these are some ideas that have been road tested a little bit
Yeah.
by the original pack. We also had, from the original pack, the RFP that went out to Gates to do an overall trail plan, that.
It went out to
it was-
3 different companies.
Yeah, it went out to 3 companies. And then was stopped while the median permit use was negotiated. So we started there, but we've redone that list with what we've learned along the way. So when we're ready for a full trails plan to go out, we've got the task list for that. But not for this agenda, we're saving it for one of your future
Yeah,
agendas.
and
So
no, totally. And
So David, are you saying not do this, not move forward with 7 and 8 and do the
No,
overall
no,
trail
absolutely,
plan?
no.
Oh, I'm
Move
sorry.
forward. I'm saying for 2A deliverables, site analysis and constraints map, we see what it would cost to apply that to all the medians we're interested in. So for 2A, that would be the only thing, that the scope of 2A is for all medians. Everything else, the scope is just for median 7 and 8. Obviously including 8 is,
Well,
We wouldn't want to, the PAC was really clear, we wouldn't want to do anything that slowed down finally getting a demonstration project out there. That's why we separated the full median trails plan and its list from this, so that we could get something on the ground that people could react to.
although though it makes it hard to give an opinion on it, honestly, in terms of, I can't comment on what, I've struggled with the median so many times, thinking there'd be cool things to do, and then going there and being like, this doesn't really work out. Having that full professional site analysis and constraints map for each medium is gonna allow me to say, okay, this is the highest and best use for median 7 and 8.
so you
Because
do want to stop the 7 and 8 project while they do
no.
the
Move,
2A.
it's dual tracks, just saying that have their scope for 2A be all the medians.
So,
Everything else stays the
But
same.
what about 2B?
Just median 7 and 8. So their concept drawings will just be for median 7 and 8, but their site analysis will be for all the medians.
I have a question. I guess I wasn't clear. So the topo that we've asked them to do, that's only for 7 and 8?
Yes,
So,
because that's what this contract is for, just for 7 and 8.
yeah. So, if we want to have all of the median topos done, they may not have the resources to do that.
Well, yeah, maybe not. Let's ask though, because I'd be interested to see if that.
Who won't have the resources to do that?
K&K?
Well, remember, K&K's not doing it. The topo, by the way, the topo was being done by a separate survey.
So,
But they'll have the resources
Do
to do
we
all
want
of
to
it.
find out whether that can be expanded right away to cover all of the medians?
I think it'd be helpful.
Well, no, because you're broadening the scope. Yeah, you're broadening the scope the wrong way. What you're talking about is looking at 7 and 8 in conjunction with the other 15 or 20 and doing, where would be the best place for a half-court basketball thing?
But
Here,
you-
here,
but-
No,
here. We don't need, no.
Yeah,
So-
and not even getting into the concepts,
No, I know.
more just
Just
the,
use an example.
Yeah, this is the flattest
topo
one.
is far down the road.
Yeah.
First you get the concept stuff, figure out what you want, then you do the topo.
But if you know you want a
Design.
certain element, don't you have the topo, don't you need the topo to know which places that particular element can
You
go?
know, it's interesting with the topo. I'm not sure they use the topo to do these designs.
and maybe that's separate. But I think it would be helpful to have the site analysis and constraints, if they could do it,
Yeah.
if it's possible, to have that be the only thing that, just like they did before. So when they present it, they're gonna present, here's a couple concepts for median 7 and 8. And then here's our constraints for all the medians. So you can see, oh, look at this median's the has the biggest slope. This median's the widest, whatever. Just the constraints and the site analysis for all the medians, everything else, the focus, the concepts, all that is gonna be 7 and 8. Don't change it.
I think for them to do constraints on all of the medians is going to be extremely time consuming, and what we're trying to get done now is just to get the proposal approved to do concepts for 7 and 8, so we can get something on the, to start it, but that would be the next step if the board chooses to do that, or if PAC wants to recommend that to the board. But that is a really big, much larger project, so to add it to this, I think would be.
Yeah,
would be
although
kind
I just see it as an
slowing the whole
important-
process down,
I mean, to me,
so
I
at this
don't,
point.
because then we're gonna be stopped at that point anyways, in terms of, to figure out the highest and best use of
I don't
7 and 8.
really- I don't
We
really
need to
think
know
so.
the constraints of all the medians.
Yeah, well, PAC did a pretty, granted, it's not a professional survey like we're going to be getting from the medians, but 7 and 8 that we've approved. But however, the initial PAC board did do a pretty extensive review, going out to all the medians, writing down the size of each one and the number of trees there and what ones they thought were doable as far as playgrounds or versus, because
Okay, I mean, as long as
so
we can
they did a
rely on
pretty-
that. I remember seeing it, and I'm
Yeah.
just saying, as long as we can rely on that.
And we narrowed it down. Granted, the 21, it was similar to 8, but it was close to Burnham Park, Quarry Park, so they wanted to try and move a park, in a
Okay,
different
then yeah,
area. And so
if
we
you're
looked
confident we
at-
could rely on that with our, when we get to the discussions of, to me, that's the whole point though, is when we have that, if we have a similar meeting we did last Saturday with the medians, having that, the inventory of all the medians, it doesn't matter what we're gonna do on them, but it does matter for the highest and best
Right,
use of
well,
7 and 8.
7 and 8 were chosen because of
Yeah.
the inventory that was done. But then we can certainly take a step back once we get something going and look
Yeah.
at the rest of them and say, okay, what are we doing
Yeah.
here?
And,
So-
I think-
David, I would ask you to not say highest and best use, because that's a term that's always used by overdevelopers.
I apologize. It's
Well,
It's a
you know,
common
here-
term.
all right, here's one way that we could handle, if, I would like to make a motion that we approve this proposal tonight, and then we can ask them for a proposal to do a site analysis and constraints map for the remaining medians. That way, this continues to move forward.
yeah, that's fine.
And we respect the work
Yeah,
that PAC
absolutely.
did in
Yeah,
making,
well-
they worked really hard on making the recommendations for 7 and 8.
Absolutely.
I don't want to second guess.
No, then that's what I'm
So-
saying. I'm not, I
So-
think there's some confusion. I'm just saying, let's ask them if they can do that and if it would delay anything and how much more it would cost, but everything else.
Would it be all right, a good point to make a motion to approve this contract as presented, and then?
I don't see why
it's time for
not.
more discussion if we.
And then what's gonna be the next steps in terms, so you two are gonna be communicating with K&K with members of the Parks Advisory Committee
Well,
or
let's
with
make a
the?
second motion to that effect. Let's
I already
approve
wrote
this.
down your first motion, which was approve this proposal in front of us and solicit an additional proposal from K&K to do a
That's
site
exactly what I wanted to know.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second, I second.
Can I assume that council has reviewed the, we don't actually have, this isn't really a contract.
No, this is a
It's a proposal.
proposal. And we have a contract with them, so presumably that gets amended.
We can
to
do an add-on.
So in any case, council has reviewed what we have
I
here.
reviewed it, and we can memorialize this into a formal contract.
Great.
Actually, a contract amendment is what we decided a while ago, that we have a contract with them, and as the board decides to ask them to do more work, we'll amend that contract.
It might be advisable that when you have separate projects, they do separate contracts.
We'll leave it up to you,
So that-
as far as I'm concerned.
There are a myriad of legal reasons to do that.
Okay.
All right,
All right,
we'll figure that out.
any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, any abstentions, motion
Great to
carries.
see another park project
Carries
moving
4-0.
forward.
No, actually, when I see a shovel in the ground,
Oh, come on, you have to
And-
take the first steps first. You
And then
can't pick
so
up a shovel until you
the-
walk forward.
So
100
the
feet.
execution of the next steps is gonna be, you two are working with K&K, with members of Parks Advisory Committee, or what's
I
gonna be the
don't know if we have
process?
that much to do at this point.
I think we can ask staff to request a proposal. I mean, I'm happy to talk to them about it,
Yeah.
except I'm leaving tomorrow for a month. But, I mean, it's pretty well spelled out there, and so to request a proposal for that.
Just kind of redefining what the
I mean,
PAC
Gil, would
committee
you be
sent them?
comfortable talking to them and asking them for a proposal for, whatever that point was, 2A? For a constraints map for all of
I
the,
can sort of.
And maybe send them what we already have, and get their opinion in terms of if that's something we could generally rely upon.
that'd be great.
So what was the problem with the data that's in our asset management system?
There's no topographic data.
But don't we have elevations for every manhole and things like that?
We don't have
I thought we did.
those.
I thought we did.
Well,
How
it doesn't matter, that doesn't come close to being a topographic survey.
How do you run a sewer system without knowing the elevation of?
As long as it flows downhill, it's good.
Somehow I knew you were going to say that. Okay.
It doesn't, we pump it, so.
Speaking of things flowing down, we will now go to item 2, Chuck's favorite thing.
Is this different in any way from what
This
we've
is not
seen?
different in any way. I will not be giving any pontification speeches on this. This is exactly the same as you've seen, I believe. This is maybe the third or fourth time in front of you. So, Half Moon Bay has approved the budget, subject to the same stipulation they had last year, which was if, once we settle the lawsuit, we'll see what happens. Montera has approved the budget as well, so we're looking to approve this general budget as well as the collections budget and memorialize this. Unless anyone's got
And
any
there's
questions.
nothing we can really do to change anything in here, so.
Like I said, we have the appearance of control, illusion, I'm sorry, that's the word I used.
Okay, so we have on.
I guess you could go to the SAM meetings,
we,
that would create a forum, so you can't.
we have on page 54 of the packet. Well, actually, it's allowed
I
with,
know, we
with,
just have to notice it.
with restrictions. No, it doesn't have to be noticed. The
No.
Brown Act says attend another local agency public noticed meeting. Explicitly allowed, with restrictions. You have to go read the restrictions. So on page 50,
Sure.
I just wanted to suggest that when the SAM board negotiates their MOU, which ends the end of this coming fiscal year, 18-19, that they not include automatic COLA increases in them, because SAM's salaries are increasing at a rate of 6%.
I think it's
Because
the automatic step increases that,
they're getting
need to go away.
3% with the COLA adjustment in the MOU as of July 1st, and what follows is the same for the unrepresented in January. And then every employee who has a satisfactory review upon their anniversary date also would get a step increase. So that would be 2 increases, 3% each, a total of 6%. So if you look at the budgets, numbers for wages, they're quite.
21%.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
okay,
So,
feel free to
yeah.
talk to other SAM directors, keeping in mind I'm only one vote.
Yes, well, in response to your question, what can we do about this? The real meat comes when the next MOU, like Delia says, comes up, because not only do they get the 3% COLA, they get the 3% step increase, and they get certification increases. So if someone goes from a,
I believe that Beverly's redo of all of the job positions has eliminated the
really? Okay.
third one. What did you call it?
Certification.
Yeah, I think raises for that are gone under, well, at least under some conditions. I might have to ask her about that
Yeah,
again.
it used to be unrestricted. So basically, if you went from an operator grade 2 to an operator grade 3, you got more money, even though that didn't help.
I think
The
the
district.
increased certification now has to be directly relevant to your current or likely future position. You can't just randomly go out and get
Which is the same thing
certifications.
as getting a grade 2 to a grade 3. You're still getting an increase, but you haven't helped the agency.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say that as a director of this agency, I feel very uncomfortable with this, you know, those who are involved express concerns about a number of aspects of this, but it's too late to do anything about it, but I hope in the future that we can, that there is a way so that it doesn't come to us like this. Then, I mean, it just seems very frustrating and,
But
you
it-
know, inappropriate.
It has to
I've
be.
been living that frustration for 15
Yeah,
years.
okay, I mean, I get it, I hear what you're saying, but it just doesn't seem right to me.
To fix
But I
it,
don't want to spend a ton of time talking about it either, because it's pointless from what I
Well,
understand.
for future reference, to fix it, it has to be fixed in the early draft stages at SAM. By
Okay.
the time it gets here, it's too late.
No, let me clarify that. It has to be fixed, but the SAM board has the power to change this. We don't.
Right.
So that's.
That's not in
the key.
conflict with what I said. Has to be fixed at the SAM board
Yeah, but
when it's
I don't
being.
want, I don't want to insinuate that we, the member agency managers, will be working with them to try and fix it, because we did try and reduce it. We did say, why do you need an additional 4 people? You know, as Matthew said at the last meeting, which I've said many times, the plant ran 3 years ago with 14 people. Why do we need 18 now? Those are the questions. So, you know, the real meat hits when the SAM board approves the initial budget in March. That's, any
Right.
changes have to come
Right.
before that for the most part.
Okay.
Right.
Let's encourage our SAM representatives to really get in there and fight. I'm sure you are, I'm not in any way saying.
Just so you know, this board does have the ability to pull SAM reps anytime.
Yep.
Do what?
That is.
What's that? For
Ability
what?
to do what?
The,
We vote on our SAM representatives
yeah,
every year.
the board as a whole can actually remove SAM representatives at any time as
Oh,
well.
I
but
was
you also
not in
choose
any
them.
way
No, I know, I'm just
expressing a
saying that
lack
that's.
of confidence in our
That's the
SAM
area of control that we
representatives.
have, is all I'm saying, as far as, or direction to your.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would never.
Well, one of the things we're faced with, and I won't name names, even though I've said this to him, to his face on camera, one of the SAM directors likes throwing buckets of money at government employees.
And the SAM board was circulated with an 8-0 vote, so let's not pick one director.
All right, I guess,
So-
because there's no point in talking
It is
about
frustrating,
this.
Barbara, I agree 100%, and like I said, I've done this,
Well,
beat my head
there's,
against
there's,
this wall
there's an
for 15
article
years.
in Daily Journal, I believe an AP news story that I will try and get circulated to all the SAM directors and all the directors here, basically how government pension costs are eating up too much of cities' budgets and causing cities to have to cut services to fund the pensions. for
That's a big
government
problem
employees.
everywhere, all government.
And if you look at
agencies
all
have
the
that
cities
problem.
and counties in California that have gone bankrupt, in, I believe in every single case, it was due to government employee pensions.
CalPERS just dropped the discount rate, so that's not gonna help.
they
Well,
dropped
Caltrans has
a
been
0.25%.
lying about it for decades.
Well, yeah,
They
but-
should have dropped it too.
Yeah.
But then if
David,
they drop it
let's be
too.
really clear. They lied about it for decades to try and get the benefits up, and now the chickens have come home to roost.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of this, I think, to me, I look at it, the only thing worse than bureaucracy is fragmented bureaucracy, and I think it's the exact opposite of what it's turned into over the years, is the exact opposite of why we even formed the JPA to begin with, in terms of to leverage resources, leverage human knowledge and assets, and over, makes total sense when we needed it, and that
Okay.
structure in place, and.
Off
and-
topic.
Well, I'm just saying, in
Off
terms of
topic.
all this, our control
Off
over it and all
topic.
that, because it's kind of frustrating that that's the number one thing we're elected on this board to implement is through SAM, and if we have no control over that, it's just an example of,
Well, to your point.
the structure of where we're at
Well,
today.
you know that a dictatorship is a
fixed.
very efficient form of government, but not a lot of people like that kind of efficiency. So can we get back to the SAM agenda?
I'd like to move approval of the SAM budget. And should I do collection services at the same time?
Different agenda item.
Okay.
Do it differently.
Well, actually, the motion would,
presented.
the mo-
Oh,
the
this whole
motion would
thing.
be to approve resolution next in order, resolution approving the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side general budget for fiscal year 2018-19.
Would you like to make the motion?
No, you just say so moved.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in
Mr.
favor,
President, you might want to ask those members of the public who'd like to speak on this item.
are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? I don't have any speaker slips here. Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Item 3. Consideration of Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side draft fiscal year 2018-19 contract collection system services budget and corresponding resolution.
Okay, this is as well as similar, or the same, I should say similar, as the budget you've all seen for the past 3 months. The only wrinkle with this is on the June 25th meeting, SAM, Monday's meeting, they're looking to approve their new agreement with Half Moon Bay and SAM for collection services, which will be different than the current agreement all 3 agencies have, which is the same agreement. So it muddies the waters, and the kind of interesting administrative technical bits is when Montero approved this budget, the SAM budget, their resolution only talked about the general budget, which by definition is the JPA, not collections. They had a rider that showed the collections budget, but it just got messy, and there was a back and forth between Sam and Montero on that.
There's an email thread on this that'll make your eyes bleed.
Yes, exactly. And the same kind of thing happened to Half Moon Bay. So Half Moon Bay went and approved the general budget, the JPA budget. They did not necessarily approve the collections budget as circulated by SAM, but they are going to approve a separate contract. So there's a lot of machinations, but the long and short of it is, I think we need to approve this budget tonight. I don't know what's gonna happen at the SAM meeting Monday night on the Half Moon Bay SAM collections budget.
Well, unless we have some specific and important legal issues with it, like,
Well, I would think, I'll talk further about it at the SAM.
but I think that as a result, almost certainly it's gonna get approved. And so I think one of the things, one of the fallouts from that is you're gonna have to press hard on getting our new contract in place as soon as possible and just say we want all the same rates that Half Moon Bay gets for
Well,
the
and again,
individual
don't focus
services.
on the rates, there's bigger pictures. The SAM contract that Half Moon Bay is signing, or they're both theoretically approving on Monday, is a deeply flawed document on many, many levels. I won't bother going into them because Jonathan and I have beat this thing to death on and on and on the liability issues, on pension issues.
So didn't they address the liability part?
They tried to address the liability part, lawyers focused on that, what they ignored was this whole year 2, where the revenues dropped from 930,000 to 590,000. That's.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You need to get our new contract in place as soon as
Oh, so-
possible, because that's gonna force the issue.
Well, and the real issue is to get our contract in place. So what I talked with Jonathan about is either in July or August, we're gonna approve a contract substantially similar to Half Moon Bay's. Scope of service will be a little different because they
Right.
hired a separate company. But to get, what we want is when, and this is bad governance, I'll say it out loud, but it's not my governance. What we want to do is be on equal footing with all the member agencies, so when something does happen in year 2, where they have a shortfall in revenue, we can figure it out on an equal basis, so,
When the effluent hits the motorized blades.
yes.
So of the things that you guys beat your heads around, any of those things that also Montera and Half Moon Bay would have issues with as well?
It's all the same as everybody, yeah.
In terms of, all have the same issues? A lot of
The
those.
issues with the agreement are the
Or
same.
Half Moon Bay would be supportive of your same issues and those same grounds most part in Montera? In terms of,
Not sure I understand the question.
I mean, if there's consensus among the managers with Montera, you and Half Moon Bay that some of these issues you're beating around, your head around are valid. You know, I feel like if there's disagreement between what you think and Montera's complete opposite, then that's where it's
No,
hard
I
to
don't
say.
think we're not at that point. We do realize that there are flaws, like I said.
Yeah.
Again, I think Half Moon Bay is frustrated by the pace of progress on collections. They're frustrated with collection performance. They want to address that, so that's why they're pushing this collections contract forward.
Yeah.
Like Leonard says, if they get this approved, we're gonna fall in line and do the same thing, so we all three have the same contracts. But the flaws I'm talking about simplistically is, you know, Half Moon Bay now, right now in our collection system, the collections crew spends 30% of their time here, 35% of their time here, and 35% of the time here. We take that $930,000 and divvy it up like that. Now, Half Moon Bay is putting into place a contract that says Sam is gonna clean their lines for $1.31 a foot. It's more like a private contract, one we would have with PSI, who's a local contractor here. Well, the problem with that is if Sam goes and cleans, I'll pick a number, 1,000 feet on a Monday, Half Moon Bay will pay them $1,300. Problem is, the cost for the collections crew that day is $3,000. So who picks up that extra $1,700? Well, no one knows yet. Conversely, if they go clean 5,000 feet, which is more likely actually, Half Moon Bay will pay them more than the collection crew daily cost.
That's why I'm saying we need to get our contract in place as soon as possible.
They've already said that, we're
Yeah.
past that, we're knee deep in it, so we're working on the scope of services right now. So-
Now, of course, the current structure, I think, makes it really difficult to understand, especially because what we pay this year is what it cost last year for Sam to provide the services last year. So we're literally paying a year behind, and I keep suggesting to totally deaf ears that we go to month billing for collection system services.
And I'd agree with that.
Well,
I will say the current contract as situated, because they are not a private company, Sam, they're KPA, is the most fair and the most workable. I don't know how these new contracts will work out. But again, we want to be on equal footing if they don't work out. So,
I'd really like to have a really, really serious evaluation of can we go to month billing on an actuals basis.
I don't know why we couldn't, even if it was delayed 2 months. But anyway, there's a requirement, I think Beverly reported at last month's meeting that this collections contract, or the collections budget was due to be signed by June 30th. It's actually June 15th, so we're 6 days late. But I think we need to approve this budget, bring back to your board in the next month or two a new collections contract based on the Half Moon Bay one, and move forward from there.
Now, in that email thread that I mentioned, part of it is Beverly saying Montera didn't approve it didn't approve the collections contract as part of their approval of the general contract, and Montera saying, well, yeah, we did, because it was presented as one package, and they approved that package. So, and the fun part of this is I believe that Montera is not meeting at all in June.
Well, I think, you probably haven't read the staff report for Sam. I believe they're gonna accept Clemens' email that yes, indeed, they did approve the collections contract finally.
Yeah, well, I only got the link this afternoon, so, no, I haven't read the packet yet. Okay, do we have a motion to approve resolution next in order, a resolution approving the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside Contract Collection Services Budget for fiscal year 2018-19?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Item 4, consideration of installing logs to limit vehicle access to the district's Burnham Strip property.
All right, Delia, you wanna talk about this?
Can we have a naming contest to rename the park and let the term Burnham Strip apply to the whole median from Capistrano to Coronado, and park be called something other than Burnham Strip?
I think
Well,
Burnham Park.
I asked the general manager about that and
And
told
I,
me to.
and Barbara and I talked about this last month, and I remember, I'm doing this more for legal means, because no, the Burnham Park is not a true park out there. So we need to describe what we're doing, especially with something like this, if
Yeah.
it becomes a hot issue. I don't want someone to say, no one's ever heard of the Burnham Park, you know, so.
Well, I said, could we have a naming contest, so that pushes it
Oh,
out
sorry.
into the future?
Yeah.
No, I think using the word Burnham Strip for the unimproved area, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, makes perfect sense. The parcel's still the Burnham Strip. I'm saying when it's done,
When it's got a sign up, yep, then it's even better.
I'm still supportive of Burnham Park.
Well, this item is on the agenda at the request of Director Warren, President Warren, actually, from several months ago. And so what I'm providing
Let
is,
me be really clear. 6 months ago, the board directed that this be done.
that's true. And there was a limitation on that amount. I believe it was $6,000 at that time. And what I found is that if we are going to be purchasing logs, it is greater than the amount that was allotted by the board in that earlier approval. So that's what I'm putting forth is, now, I would, as a caveat, I'd like to say the estimate I have is for $10,400. That was based on about, I think that was based on 400 feet of logs, and, for lack of a better word. And in the meantime, I've contacted the Department of Public Works to see if we could get some more from them, because the logs we have out there now on the fire station side were provided for free, and they actually put them there for us for free. So that didn't cost us a dime, except for the.
That saved them hauling them way off somewhere else.
Yeah, but they did us a favor too, and they were very nice about it. Now, I did get a response back from Joe Lococo in Public Works, and he said that they do not currently have any logs, but that they do anticipate a couple of removals that they will be doing in-house in the coming months.
In town here?
Yes. And he said additionally, they can keep an eye out for any logs generated by any of the PG&E vegetation management people. Apparently they have a rapport with them, and they occasionally can get logs through them as well. So he has put me in touch with Ryan, who is in the works out of the Princeton office. They're the ones that actually do the cutting for Public Works here. I've worked with them before. They're the ones that put the other ones out there for us. So if, you know, there's a timeline here where you want to have some logs put out there, I can't guarantee anything if we wait, but that it is a possibility we could alleviate the expense.
Well, if it can be done part at a time, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
But remember, the board discussion before was to keep the large vehicles out.
Right, and you had given us an option for that. Did you want to explain what your option?
Well, what I suggested at the time, and the board agreed to, if I recall, was some sort of arrangement where to get into the ad hoc parking area, you had to make a turn that pretty much only a normal passenger car would be able to make.
The problem that I see is that you're creating like a maze for cars to drive into the parking lot. And from some investigations that I've done with other park properties where they've tried to keep out large vehicles, they say the larger the vehicle you're trying to keep out, then the stronger the barricades have to be. And we've already seen examples where I think, and I'm not for sure who hit the log, but it could have been a fire truck, it could have been any other vehicle, but the log was actually very easily knocked and rolled over several feet, and it had to be moved back. So I don't think making a maze for large vehicles, because they're gonna try and go through no matter what, you're gonna end up with logs everywhere. I just don't see how that would work unless we had some type of way of staking them into the ground, you know, permanently keeping
Well,
them
and-
where
Well, what's our enforcement capabilities in terms of at what point would be too large? What are we talking here in terms of?
Passenger car.
But what about the surfers who come in a van?
What size van?
Well,
No, we're talking about
Yeah.
keeping RVs and tractor
large
trailers
trucks,
out.
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Now, one of the problems we've had.
If we put up a
recently-
sign, no
Yeah.
RVs, and
One of the
Yeah,
problems.
satisfy
sign-
that, and
signs
try
will
to
work.
enforce it at least, or?
Well, this is the thing. Now, we've had some RVs that have been parking out there, even though we have no overnight parking. I have had difficulty getting the sheriffs to enforce this, and I am not capable of, by myself,
Yeah.
going out and knocking on doors at 10 o'clock at night asking people to leave. That does not really put me in a good position. And I don't have really any authority with the people that I'm dealing with.
Do
and I can tell
the
you
no overnight parking signs, which are left over from when the harbor
from
district
when the
owned the
harbor
property,
district, right.
do they have a California Vehicle Code section
I'm
or
not
or
sure.
a San Mateo County Code
I'm
section?
not
Because it's
sure.
not enforceable if they don't have.
There is no,
There is no,
no separate
yeah,
ordinance.
yeah.
Okay, so you'll have to get the signs
okay.
modified to.
We can do that.
I think Dave's
and I
saying
don't know
there is
which.
not an ordinance on, there's not an
No,
The
ordinance.
there's
county
no-
does not have an ordinance like that. It's the standard 3-day ordinance.
So in other words, there's no code to put on.
Well, it may be just drive around and look and find some other legitimate signs. Now, all of the parking signs in Princeton that say no parking outside the fences there, none of those are legal because they don't cite a code section, plus they're talking about public property anyway.
Right, and regardless of the signs, it is still private property, and that's where I'm getting resistance from the sheriff's department. Now, they did go out there last week when there were two.
Well, if they want to play that game, if they want to claim it's private property owner can have a vehicle towed immediately if it's illegally
Right,
parked.
but if there's people inside the vehicle, that's kind of difficult to do. I mean, you're not, what do you do? They're gonna jump out and drive away, I guess, but, you know, it's an option.
You need
Wait.
an ordinance on your books, and you need an enforcement contract.
I believe that we did pass
I was
an
gonna say,
ordinance.
Jonathan
Yes, we
actually
did,
did a whole
we did
Yeah.
pass an ordinance, and we do have an ordinance.
Well, we did say how are we gonna get them to enforce it now?
Yeah,
So,
the difficulty is,
But he
on,
also did a bunch of research on what kind of signs we
Yeah,
he
need
did.
to put up.
now, on the
Well, let's bring
signs,
it back to the information.
I forgot that we had the ordinance, so on the signs, we can quote our own ordinance code. That's the
but again, that doesn't
citation.
mean the sheriff would have to help us in enforcing it. I believe. our
Historically, the
ordinance-
sheriffs in this county don't do anything on the coast side that requires them to get out of their cars.
Well,
The reason we went down this path, I'll give you a little history here. The reason we went down this path is because we looked at signs, we looked at, illegal parking, having the sheriff come in. We looked at trespassing, we looked at trying to tow an RV, which I'm not sure any tow trucks on the coast can do, especially while people are in it. And we decided all this legal maneuvering isn't the way to go. That's when we started talking about putting up some kind of blockade where they could do that. So that's why we're here now. You want us to revisit,
Are we just talking
legal
about
stuff?
size management, or what if, so if a group of surfers came in on a surf trip in an RV just for the day, not overnight parking, they wouldn't be able to park there?
No, that's not it at
We're just
all.
saying no overnight parking?
They wouldn't be able to park there if we set up these logs like we're talking about. Yes, they would not be able to park there.
Not
Okay.
as they're shown in the staff report. This is Leonard's,
Yeah, it's actually two different issues that
And
got
Yeah.
if I could
conflated
just-
here.
Totally separate issues.
If I could just mention, I think part of the problem is that some of the bigger vehicles tend to park along the view corridor where you look down Portola and there's the shrubs.
Right.
And they park right there, right in the view. And a lot of times I've gone over there and asked them to move, so, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the proposal.
Well, actually, that problem is in some part solved by the arrangement you drew.
And that's what I'm proposing here, and I haven't gotten to that yet. So rather than proposing Director Warren's suggestion, which is to have it be kind of a maze that would make it difficult for big vehicles to pull in at any time, which would be blocking the front part and having some kind of turns, I was proposing to block off the segments that are near the shrubbery. And of course, if you look, there's a page 73, I believe it is, that has the proposal where it would, if we put logs along the shrubbery there, it would prevent any vehicle from parking in the view corridor. And that would be any time of the day, obviously, would be there permanent. And then we've also had some problems with dumping. Again, it tends to be over in the bushes. I'm not saying it's gonna solve the problem, because sometimes it's right in the middle of the lot, but what I'm proposing is enough logs to block some of the shrubbery areas and keep the parking centered more towards the middle of the dirt lot. And of course, the board can like this or not like this.
I like
It's
your
just-
arrangement. I think it's logical.
It's a suggestion.
We're gonna do
It
So-
is gonna take a lot more logs than I originally got the quote for, though, however, because my original quote was, just going from one end to the other on both the highway side and on the Obispo side, with some extras in there for however Director Warren had suggested.
Well-
But this is gonna require more.
Well,
I would say that because you won't get all the logs at once, the one on the property line is probably the most important one, because it splits the area into what's on our property and what's on Caltrans property, and it'll force the issue in terms of the illegal ramp that has been built there in the dead of night, I assume, that is allowing people to drive on and off the highway
I've seen
there.
it during the day. There are regularly people now, instead of going up
Yeah.
Obispo to the signal, they're going right through the
Right.
lot and getting on the
And I've
highway.
also heard that, and I probably only heard this from like one person, but I've heard that during seriously congested times, there's people cutting through town and then getting back on the highway going south by driving off of the property there, and that's totally ridiculous.
Yeah, it
We
happens
need
a
to
lot.
stop that. And basically, if we put the logs across the property line, that will force Caltrans to deal with that.
I would like to suggest also calling some of the local private companies that do tree cutting. That's happening all the time, and it seems to me that instead of hauling them off somewhere and
Yeah.
disposing of them, if we have to pay someone to locate them, but if the local companies have some appropriate logs, I would think it'd be to their benefit. They'd be happy to give us logs for free.
Well,
Yeah.
I was actually thinking, Delia knows who's gonna build a house here, it's in the report. You know,
That's true.
Call them and say, if you have logs that meet these requirements.
Yeah, it's hard, though.
It's more the
because-
time of just
Yeah,
your literally.
I don't always know
Yeah.
who the contractor is gonna be.
there must
But
be
let's try it. I mean, yeah,
There
that's,
must be, you could call three,
sure.
look in Yelp and see who the three best
Oh, yeah, I
reviewed
could call.
local
Yeah.
tree cutting companies and just
It
ask
it
them.
For
is
sure.
difficult to find trees of the size that we need, which is greater than 24 inches.
Yeah.
but for sure, we're gonna use,
Since I get county referrals for every large tree that's being cut, I
Oh.
can tell you there aren't very many.
okay, so yeah.
And-
You need 3.5 foot diameter
Yeah.
logs.
Well, can you tell us if one's gonna get cut down?
I have not seen, there was one when I was on vacation, and they were mostly diseased trees like the ones that were at the fire station.
Yeah.
So yeah, see what we can do and we'll fill in the gaps with
And just so you know, I
this
did
contract.
investigate the fire district. I think it's gonna be more trouble than what it's worth.
No, they look a mess.
Yeah, so, okay.
Good job on that.
So for the proposed parking,
All right, so what's the board direction gonna be then, that as Delia can locate logs for free, she'll fill out this sketch here?
Yeah, well, let's at least start by working with County Public Works to bring
Just a,
the
yeah.
logs that are available, and let's start getting them into position.
So are we in agreement that this will be done on an as available, as a materials available basis?
It'd probably be a good idea to try to get the Caltrans boundary done at one time,
The property line.
yeah.
And one of the things I was thinking,
That wouldn't
Julia,
cost
is
that
where you have logs that are gonna be placed like this, have them tied together, and then neither one of them can be rolled. Right? If they're solidly tied together with, I don't know, railroad spikes or something. I have no idea how you would do that, but I'm sure there are experts around.
I don't know, that would be, my thinking is that maybe it'd be, first of all, go ahead and request that they get us any free trees that they have and put them along the Caltrans property line. And then maybe we look at the cost to just complete at least that line of logs. I agree, it's a real safety issue.
There's another
So-
possibility, but I suspect it would cost way too much, and that would be to get the county to authorize us sending somebody into Quarry Park with a chainsaw. I mean, look, there's at least 10,000 giant weeds there. Probably more like
They have
100,000.
to go through an EIR, and they just.
Yeah.
What, to cut one of the giant weeds? You have to go, what? Gotta be kidding
Well,
me.
they just did take a whole bunch down, so it's too bad we missed our chance on that, but whatever. So
They were mostly small.
I would say, let's, I don't know if we need a motion, but let's go ahead and focus on the Caltrans boundary with free trees, and then.
Let's refer to it as our property line.
Our property line, and bring back a cost to complete it if we were gonna purchase trees, just to do that part,
Logs.
logs.
Our
Okay.
general manager, I think direction to staff would be sufficient about it.
Does that make sense? Let's say yes to
Okay.
free trees, and then find out how much it would cost to finish it with purchased logs, free logs, and purchased logs.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about it is when we get the master plan, we might change this around, but we could still utilize these logs in a different format possibly versus fencing or whatever that we'd have to completely tear out again.
Yeah.
So I feel like no matter what, we're gonna need this. We might change it around over time. I'm just kind of going back to back to working with Caltrans in terms of, and kind of those longer term plans is like one of the plans kind of had parking partially on their property, and whether that's formal or kind of more of the, I don't, the right word isn't easement, but in terms of where part of the project is utilizing their property, knowing that they're not gonna complain or do anything, but for, incorporating that into the project.
You have to request an official encroachment permit from Caltrans. They have a
Yeah.
very detailed process for that.
Yeah, officially,
I'm not saying you're gonna give it to me.
But
officially or unofficially, if we left a little gap in the logs, little cars would naturally go.
But
and park.
RCD was supposed to take point on that, on talking to Caltrans, because we are supposed to be doing something
Yeah,
to
it's
improve
not, I don't know what's
surface.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we find out what happened with
The
that?
ball is in their court.
Yeah, maybe you could say, hello, remember us?
Yes, I know.
Actually, I have done that.
What-
on there that
So
we're supposed to be doing.
I would like to point out that based on Julia's suggested map here, that ad hoc parking area is roughly an acre. That's, and so if the whole property is 6 acres and the riparian area covers nearly 2 acres of that, this is 1/3, did I get that right? 1/4 of the usable area. So, just wanted to get that out.
Yeah. One more suggestion, I was gonna say in terms of, back to your point, making it so that they can't make the turn or whatever, is maybe designating a few spots, if we reformat this, where we have our oversized vehicle parking, and making it clear, they can park there, just not overnight, if it's RV or whatever. And so there's a few spots for oversized vehicle parking, and then everything else is, compact, so that, it kind of directs, a few spaces in that space for that, And then all that signage is right there, knowing that they could park there, but they can't stay overnight with it. So maybe.
Let's
maybe we'll think about that.
revisit that after we see what happens with this.
Yeah.
But as part of this, are we also giving direction to get appropriate signs there citing our ordinance code for enforcement? So that you can point to that when the sheriffs say, we don't want to.
I can work with council and see what we can.
Yeah, and I would suggest that part of the language be, and I can't remember the exact words, but I'm sure council knows what the words are, something about permission to pass revocable at any time. A little-known tidbit back from in the days when I worked at Stanford before they improved Sand Hill Road. Sand Hill was totally private road completely contained on Stanford's property. And I heard that once a year they went out there and stopped traffic and handed every driver a flyer saying, this is a private road, we just happen to let you drive on it right now. We could stop that anytime we want to.
I think you've already passed the public use.
Does it matter for government-owned land? None of that like prescriptive easements, and what's the other one where if you silently take over paying the taxes, adverse possession? None of those things can be used against government agencies. So you can squat on government land for 40 years like the Clipper Ridge homeowners and be kicked off overnight with a letter.
So I will utilize
That's-
logs from the county and then bring it back to the board if we need more to finish making the priority, the Caltrans side block off.
And-
for the rest.
Right.
And then the parallel priority is the
Where
appropriate
we can
signs.
yes.
Yeah, because we should probably, if we do partial, you should probably leave the middle open so that you don't end up with people driving in and doing
Oh,
this
yeah.
in there,
Yeah.
If you're gonna do some logs, start on the two ends. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, that's logical, it's what you would have done, but I'm just thinking about if we do the partial, then we're gonna be directing kind of traffic in one way.
But you're talking about the.
logs from the county, they may just set them out there and then I'll wait and see what we've got and what we need there. And
Great.
we'll move on.
So you're talking about along the property line, start at one end rather than both ends?
No, I'm saying start at both ends, but leave the middle open until we can fully close it off, so that we don't end up with coming out one side and then people coming down that illegal entry, going around like this and.
Oh, actually, how about starting right where the illegal entry is and going the other
Yeah,
direction?
that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think the first logs you get should go right opposite that illegal entry onto the highway. Are we agreed on that?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've beaten that agenda item into a bloody pulp.
Nice to see progress being made. Well done.
Well, remember my shovel in the ground when I see logs on the ground. Okay. We're now at Chuck's favorite agenda item.
I thought the budget was my favorite agenda item.
Yeah, well. Item 5, consideration of district sewer authority mid-coastside report.
If you don't mind, I have copies of the June 25th agenda I can add for this item if you want,
June 20,
which is Monday's meeting.
oh,
So, and again, speaking to some comments by Barbara, maybe David, one of the things I changed about 6 months ago is we're trying to be, rather than reactive to what happened to Sam, proactive. So
Okay.
if the MOU is coming up next year, we want to start talking about it at our board level from
Good.
February.
Good.
Rather than having it reported back, hey, they handed out raises, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. So,
okay, so this is the upcoming meeting in a few days. And Sam is down to 3 closed session items.
And so if you look at really the meat, the agenda is item number 7. Unless, Leonard, you want to talk about 6C,
6.
the monthly budget report.
You mean mention that when I asked for in the monthly board packet to have something that clearly indicates how much money we have in each bank account. I didn't get one other director to support me, and staff gave me some incomprehensible argument for why not.
Yeah. That.
Yeah, members of the public should feel free to go to Sam and say, how much is in each bank account? Because Sam apparently doesn't want to disclose that information. One of the other directors actually had the gall to tell me, well, I can go down to the office anytime I want and ask to see how much is in each account.
So this came about from when Sam called a special meeting, they said they couldn't make payroll and blah, 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 and I went and looked at their agenda items, and I couldn't tell how much money they had in the bank, so I had to email them, and they.
No, I think you asked me, and I said,
Well, I begged you to send the email, and you wouldn't, so then I had to. And they said they had $1.65 million, and I asked what payroll was, and they said $97,000. I said, it seems like a lot of money, and then there's the SAM reserves guidelines, and on and on and on. But what I noted was you can't tell from the board packet how much money they have in both their accounts. So I suggested to Leonard that he asked them to provide that, and he got roundly beat about the head, it sounds like. So, but just so you all know, it's standard practice. We have our balance sheet, which shows the money in our checking.
Right.
The funny part is each of the 3 member agencies puts this in their financials.
Right.
Sam doesn't think they need to, I don't know.
If it's worth mentioning, I actually met with the SAM auditor 2 weeks ago, and he agreed that they should be providing complete financials such as what we provide.
good, thank you, because
It's not even-
I was actually
it's not even-
meaning to call him
it's not
and
even a
suggest
question.
that.
Yeah, may very well recommend it in the audit report.
Well, I don't get it. What's the excuse why not to? Because it doesn't seem that that would be that.
I know.
But is the excuse that it's, that they just don't have the time?
No, they're
The
still
resources?
struggling with the ridiculously expensive software that the general manager insisted we approve Sam buying and converting over to it, which is, you know,
There's
So they're still in the middle of a
no
conversion.
excuse that you can't produce a balance sheet. Or if you can't produce a balance sheet, that you can't look at your monthly life statement and your checking account, like Half Moon Bay does, they don't show the statement, they write it in the paragraph of the agenda memo. Here's how much we have in this, here's how much we have in that.
So basically, they're saying that they're just not, they're willing to do it in the future, they're just not.
no.
Done with
they
their
didn't-
conversion?
No, they didn't commit to ever doing it.
So even when they're done with
They
their
don't think, I
conversion.
guess that they don't think it's a
They
good.
did not commit to ever doing it.
And
They-
what
they-
about the other board members that weren't on your, that weren't?
Well, Scott Boyd in particular is the one that told me I can go down there and look at it when I want to. No, I don't get paid to do that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even Jim didn't support my request. I was at the board meeting.
Well, and Scott had sent me an email after I made this request. He said to me, he said, is there a reason you can't glean this information from the SAM board packet? It's the
Yes,
first
it's
time
not
I've ever
there.
heard from Scott, and I wrote back, yes, actually, I can't.
It's not in there.
And they have a weird, strange pooled cash account report, but it shows a negative $450,000 balance or something.
Well, the question that I actually asked at the SAM board meeting is, I said, I'm trying to understand how bank accounts can have a negative balance. And to be truly entertained, go pull the video for that agenda item. I think it was near the beginning of the meeting, and listen to the convoluted explanation.
Okay.
Has to be heard to be believed. No, even then you won't believe it. Oh, boy. So what do we have to actually report on?
So there's
from the past
nothing, I don't think
meetings?
there's anything big on this one, with what agenda we handed out, you guys can give. me
Well,
a report.
let's cover the past meetings first. Mostly, we've had time spent in closed session, and then the Water Quality Board, basically, Sam is finalizing the settlement with the Regional Water Quality Board over the enforcement action for the various spills, and the Regional Water Quality Board went back 10 years Why did they go back 10 years? Well, they wanted to go back further, but the database that they have easy access to was started 10 years ago, so that's all they could, that's as far as they could go back without doing more work than they wanted to do. The collection system maintenance contract with Half Moon Bay, that was punted to this upcoming meeting. And I guess that's all for June 11th. And then May 21st, we actually have minutes here. Yeah, okay, that was a special meeting with basically one real item on the agenda, which was to authorize the general manager to expend funds from the SAM Emergency Repair Reserve to continue operating until the member agency outstanding payments are received. That turns out to have been more theater than necessity because of the fact that they're hiding how much money's actually in the bank account. And so I was really adamant that the record reflect that this authority is only if it is actually necessary. And trust me, it's not going to be necessary ever.
And for the record, we were current with our payments to Sam.
Thank you.
Okay, so for the upcoming SAM meeting, we got closed session, consent agenda. One of the interesting things on the consent agenda, oh no, that was, yeah. Authorize the general manager to pay CalPERS the unfunded annual liability payment for FY 2018-19 in a single payment of $171,000. Is there any reason why not to do that?
I don't exactly know what that's about.
Well,
CalPERS is not
is
my area of
apparently,
expertise because, we're a private company, so.
but I think CalPERS is now more proactively saying, pay us current, not build up a giant unfunded liability.
Yeah, I guess the question I would have for you guys to ask is, where's that money coming from? Is it coming from the employees? Because when I read the staff report, you could either make it seems on a paycheck basis, or you pay up front, you save $12,000 in interest. So that's what they're doing. So I don't know if that's employee funds or if it's actual.
Actually, I think it is employer funds, and the reason why I'm saying that.
Employer?
Yes, because we do the same. Our payment, of course, is much smaller, but if you pay in advance, it's less than
Okay.
if you pay it later down the road. But it is employer contributions, from what I understand.
So, and I would just ask if this is included in the 18-19 budget. I'm not sure I've ever seen this, but that doesn't mean anything. I could have forgotten.
Well, based on what Julia just said, I would assume that it is in the budget somewhere because
Well, I would
we'd
just
either
ask
have
the
to pay it
question.
monthly or pay it in this one.
Right, I would just ask the question. Is it
Yeah.
in the budget?
I'd just like to make mention too that SAM has very few details in their budget. If you look at much larger agencies, they provide you with details, and we are not getting them in their budget. There's not even director's fees broken out in the SAM budget, so.
Well, the SAM budgets
Yeah, let's not even go on this.
historically have a lot of pages with very little information on each page. Something about burying paperwork. Okay, I think the key thing on this upcoming agenda looks like adopt the SAM bi-weekly pay schedule and the general budget and the collection services budget and the contract with Half Moon Bay for collection system maintenance. And as Delia has mentioned, the SAM employees, and this starts with the unionized employees and then trickles up to the unrepresented employees. On paper, it looks like everything's reasonable, but they get raises in 3 different ways that cumulatively, what did you say they add up to? 20% a year?
Well,
No,
this past year was 21% cumulative, but they've added staff as well, so. But
It's-
the
it's
key is
general.
the steps. It's the COLA of 3%, step increase of 3%, and then possibly the certification, which may or may not still be in place.
I mean, it is funny though, looking at their next meeting. I mean, this meeting alone is like $1 million in terms of, pay CalPERS, adopt the budget, pay the employees. It's all, in terms of the, factoring legal costs, everything else, versus time spent on actually the solutions of what, the original intent of a JPA and what it, this meeting agenda just looks like a lot of money's getting approved and, there's not a lot of discussion on other topics that need to be fixed, and it's interesting, just looking at it.
Well, seems to me that as long as certain rules in the Brown Act are carefully followed, other directors can go down and make comments on any SAM agenda item when they're addressed to the full board in public.
Is that a question?
Is that a question? I was just gonna say the same thing.
Or is it a trick question?
I just wanted to see if
They're all
council's
perfect.
going to disagree with that.
There are restrictions.
Hmm?
There are restrictions on how you handle yourself and comport yourself.
Yeah, basically, you can't talk to any other directors from this agency at a meeting of another local agency, but you can comment on an item that is on the agenda. But you can only comment to the whole board, not side conversations. I think I got that right.
That's correct.
Broadly.
Okay, next.
So both of you could. Feel free.
Thanks.
Since,
Yeah.
as I keep pointing out,
Been
I'm
a
only
few
one
Saturdays.
vote.
It was very, very educational to go to a SAM meeting.
And the rest of the SAM board thinks it's just me, so maybe they need to see it's not just me.
So, and you guys will have to vote on 7D, which is that contract which I was mentioning before with Half Moon Bay and Sam. So, I think if you vote, I'm not telling you how to vote, obviously, but I think if you vote no, that will cause things to blow up. If you vote yes, then.
That'll cause things to blow up.
It'll just be at a different time. If you vote yes, like we've said, we're gonna have to put our agreement in place at the next meeting or the meeting after whenever we get it done, so.
So.
But if they vote no, and the other four.
Montero, they only need one of the vote,
Yeah.
for the most part. So one of the guys from Montero votes yes, or gals. And it goes ahead anyway.
Now, realistically, how soon do you think you can get our contract ready for approval?
If not July, August, certainly. And I would probably mention that if indeed you do decide to vote yes, that you mention the fact that, okay, we're approving this, we think it's flawed, but we're going ahead. We're gonna be bringing this in front of you in August, say.
Yeah.
So we expect the same courtesy. And, staff knows this, I've told staff, we've discussed all the ways it can and cannot be.
Okay,
Half
so
Moon Bay staff.
instead of me trying to transcribe that right now, can you send me the 2-sentence email that says that?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, next agenda item, consent agenda. Anything to be held for discussion? Delia pointed out a correction in the agenda. It's item 8 is printed as May 2018 financial statements. It should be April 2018 financial statements. So nothing to be held for discussion. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 6, May 17th, 2018 meeting minutes, item 7, June 2018 warrants for $290,624.24.
27 cents.
What did I say?
24.
27 cents. Knew I should just round it off. Item 8, approval of April 2018 financial statements. Item 9, approval of assessment district distribution number 11-17/18. Item 10, approval of Class 3 mainline permit, APN 041-121-100 for 2782 Pullman Avenue, Halfmoon Bay. Owner, I'm not going to try and pronounce that.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, no discussion, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions, motion carries unanimously. We did items 11 and 12 at the beginning of the
Can
meeting.
I say one more thing on that? I just wanted to congratulate all the people who worked so hard on the Granada Gazette. And
Yeah, but
finally, there's a
Next
typo
time,
in the.
have somebody proofread.
It happened. Believe me, this was a true.
What's the typo?
In one of the locations
GSCD.
that.
Well, the question is how many typos, though?
Well,
I
that's
would
the
have
only one
expected
I-
you to find like 20 at least. That means that that's,
I'll have to read it more carefully.
Very well done.
one typo that's pretty impressive, I think.
Pat
for
and
your-
Nancy did a huge amount of work in this. A lot of people worked hard.
Trust me, Matthew would have found it too.
And you should notice the letter I changed previously to formerly.
Thank you. Okay, so we did items 11 and 12. Item 13, attorney's report.
No report.
Item 14, general manager's report.
I've spoken enough. I have nothing.
Item 15, administrative staff report.
Just a quick mention that we will be changing banks effective July 1st, at the request of Director Clark, and I'll give you some instructions on going down and signing the new signature cards. within the
We have to go to them?
Yes, they are requiring that you go to the bank. And
Which bank?
It's the one down on Main Street.
First National?
And
FNB?
First
it's,
National?
Yeah,
First National Bank.
The one that's next to CCWD.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
First National.
Yes, I'll be giving you all the information.
And by the way, a couple months ago, I tripped over some article online about Wells Fargo, and the abuses were still ongoing as of a couple months ago. New things that they did wrong
Matthew
kept
actually
coming to
pointed
light.
that out, yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I mean, what makes it worse are new commercials.
I know.
The new Wells Fargo. I can't believe they have the audacity to run that. I cannot believe that.
Now I'm gonna have,
Next letter's gonna tell me the banks are in cahoots too, just like Time Warner.
All right.
that I
Okay.
don't
So
know.
are we,
Engineers report.
I'll just summarize John's report. The county is actually putting in a new bridge eventually over Meteor Creek. So we're coordinating with them to have our pipeline go over that. At the same time, they're still pursuing switching that pipeline out through state parks. We just got the appraisal completed for that easement we need from state parks. $6,000 appraised for the permanent easement and $3,000 for the construction easement. So.
Sounds pretty cheap.
Yeah, very well, that's the appraisal. They have to accept that.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I joked because I think the appraisal cost us $5,000.
oh my God.
Could have given that to state parks,
Jeez.
sweeten the pot.
yeah.
Jeez.
So one of the things that is, let's say less than 100% clear to me is even if the rerouting over an easement on state parks proceeds quickly, which in
It will not.
my experience in government,
No.
it's like you gotta be kidding. So unconditionally, we're still gonna pursue getting a pipe on the
Yes.
replacement bridge.
Absolutely. So,
And,
Yeah.
yeah,
and,
we have
and,
the old
and
pipes
we would
still.
always keep that pipe there long-term, even if we plug it at
That's what
both ends
John
and
is
stop using
negotiating.
it.
The county works with us very well, actually. Joe LaCoa is a good guy to work with. There's another engineer there. So yes, we're pursuing both.
Good. Now, the funny thing, of course, is when they installed that bridge and didn't paint it, they said, oh, it'll develop a patina of rust that'll protect the rest of it. Yeah, right.
So, I will mention some of us don't want that bridge built in the second place because of the erosion. So, given that, we don't automatically assume you can pump it.
Hmm.
Well, the pipeline will be the cheapest part of that bridge.
No, I was just saying the location may be
Oh,
several hundred feet away.
yeah.
So, you mean upstream?
The old Alameda,
Hmm?
the Alameda.
That's pretty far up. So are we gonna be able to reroute that
We actually,
far?
that was one of our options we looked at. believe it or
Seems
not,
to me that
back
when Bill
8
Catke
years
was
ago.
on the board, we had a field trip meeting out there to look at that.
Right.
Putting a pipe bridge over somewhere in that area.
Yeah, because there's talk that bluff is gonna fail. Not talk.
There's no
It is
question.
failed, right?
Yeah,
It's beyond talk, right?
So, pardon me while I sort through my DVDs of meetings with Chuck saying, that bridge is never gonna fall down.
Has it yet? I'm right until I'm wrong.
There's very little of the arch left.
I'm right until I'm wrong.
Anything else on the engineer's report?
No.
Okay, future agenda items.
So I don't know, we don't have to make a decision right now. I was just gonna say, be nice to have a parks-only meeting, I think before the end of September, possibly, maybe, after they meet again. You guys meet in early September?
It's 10th or 12th or something like that.
So we'll look at that, but let's keep that in mind. I feel like there's so many things that we could spend so much
Just
time on.
quickly, I want to mention there are some things that PAC has completed, such as their list of priorities that need to go before the board, and so there are several items, I think.
Yeah,
are
Julie's
general-
brought a bunch of stuff to me.
Yeah.
Our agendas have been so loaded that, we don't want
Yeah,
another
for sure.
11:30 meeting, so.
So maybe in August or
Schedule.
So I think we're
September.
gonna be doing more and more of these.
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
Okay.
meetings.
So whenever you want to discuss scheduling.
So, on the July meeting, you expect enough sewer stuff that we couldn't realistically do park stuff
We'll
there?
just leave July alone.
Okay.
I think, I like the idea of even once, it's kind of, even the idea of everyone shows up for parks and then everyone just kind of takes off versus an all parks meeting.
Yeah.
Knowing that people are gonna stay there for the whole time,
It keeps the focus on it.
it's a
right?
good dynamic, yeah,
So
versus.
let's
Yeah.
schedule it
Okay.
at our next
Yeah,
meeting.
And what I've seen
announce it.
is the turnout for like sewer and water board meetings is zip, but turnout for,
No, it's not zip. We have two
Turn-
concerned
turnout for
members of the
turnout
public
for
here for
parks-
the entire meeting.
turnout for parks agencies is typically a lot higher. You go to a mid-10 meeting and they're packed. So hopefully everybody received the Granada Gazette sometime in the last few days. I forget when this arrived. But if you haven't, I assume there's extra copies that you could walk over to the office and get a copy.
Or at the post office.
Or maybe we could get it on the website.
Oh, you should see the new parks page on the website.
It's on.
Well,
Excellent.
before the public outreach event, I looked on the website to try and find information about the public outreach event. I couldn't find it.
Oh, the bird side
Hmm?
Was it not on there?
That was an oversight.
Oh.
Because I thought it went till 1 o'clock. Somebody else had told me noon,
That was my mistake, sorry.
and
I
I
thought,
want.
what did we add it to?
It went on Facebook, it went on Nextdoor, it went on.
No, we had a link on the, was it on the newsletter then?
It was
We,
on-
we put the notice in the newsletter. We got that on.
The June
The last
16th?
minute.
Yeah, it went on the
Yeah.
newsletter.
Oh, that's what happened.
I mean, I,
Remember, no, I posted the newsletter on, that had the link, and then you told me that your copy was different for the connection to
The website.
recreation. No?
No.
Okay, anyway. it
Apples
doesn't-
and oranges.
It doesn't, okay, all right. Anyway, sorry about that.
So the newsletter is a photo of all the PAC members, but it's illegal to publish photos of the board members at public expense. Go figure.
Yeah, I thought about that. That's not that cut and dried, is it?
You can put them on our website, but you can't put it in a push
You
mailing.
can't spend public money on.
On push.
You could have the entire board.
No, this is the advisory.
but they're elected though.
The advisory,
They're elected.
no, the advisory committee, that one's legal, but I'm saying we can print their photos, but we can't print our photos.
Yeah.
But you know what the Harbor District does, and I don't know, is it this committee? Anyway, we need to think about maybe having bios of the directors with their photos on the website.
Sure. Y'all wanna give me a bio and a photo? We'll put it on.
I suggest, I just did this for the History Association. It was a lot of work. I suggest that we have a couple questions and a format so that the bios look somewhat similar. Because I just asked everyone for bios and it just was ridiculous, the form. Some people gave a list, some people gave bullets, some people had paragraphs, some people.
Right.
So if we ask like 2 or 3 questions, and you don't put the questions in, you just
Right.
have, so that the answers look somewhat
Yeah.
similar.
And there should be a total length limit.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. So,
all right.
All right. I think we can adjourn.
All right.
We are adjourned.
thanks, everybody. See you in a month.
We-
France,
oh, fantastic.
tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful.